morning, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of Life in Contradiction, the show where we create space to talk about the challenges of navigating modern life and trying to reconcile our cultures, what we stand for, and who we're expected to be in all of this, right through all of this contradiction. My name's Andi Matthews. I'm really excited to be here again, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host Sarah-Jane McMartin. Hey, Sarah.
Hello, everyone.
Tonight, Sarah and I are joined by special guest Jess Nicotina Lee. Jess is an artist, a photographer, and as well as a graduate of anthropology and theatre. Talk about a contradiction right there. Welcome, Jess. We're really happy to have you join us. How are you this evening?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm feeling really nervous. Hope I can bring something interesting to the show tonight.
So just before we start, thank you, Jess, for joining us. But I also would like to do an acknowledgement of country. I'm honoured to be on the ancestral lands of the Wurundjeri and the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I acknowledge the First Nations people as the traditional custodians of the continent where we live, learn and work, whose cultures are among the oldest living cultures in human history. I pay respects to the elders of the community and extend my recognition to the descendants who are present and emerging.
Amazing. Thanks, Sarah-Jane. I guess tonight we really wanted to kind of get into talking about study, our career choices and the impacts that challenges and contradictions tend to have on our choices and how we navigate through this. So I guess, Jess, I might throw it over to you. It'd be great to kind of start and kick off and just learn a little bit more about you initially. What do you do for work? What's your background? Are you studying?
Yeah, well, like you said, I just finished a Bachelor's of Arts and focused on anthropology and English and theatre. So I did that at University of Melbourne and, just finished that undergrad degree. I'm working as an alumni coordinator at Fountain Gate Secondary College, where I also went to high school and graduated not too long ago. So, I really enjoy, I guess, bringing anthropology to all the work that I do, whether it's creative work or whether it's community development work. I think it's all pretty intertwined. It's, about actually enriching, especially young people's development. And, and that's what a lot of my life centers around.
So, Jess, do you find that because you've studied anthropology, the idea of just community is like one of the driving forces in your work and how you just practice your art?
Yeah, definitely. Especially with what, we've created with Waver There Collective, which I'm also a part of. And I know Sol is, here doing a interview the other week and she's a part of that as well. I just see it as really feeding everything I do. What is a creative-based or creative-focused arts organisation and collective, but it's so much about community and, feelings of connectivity socially and culturally. And, and I find that having a grounding in anthropology has helped me a lot with that. But, there's a lot of work to be done in that field in itself as well in terms of, departing from a really colonial history. So I think much is the same in the art world. So, yeah.
That's really interesting. What actually drew you to those disciplines initially?
Yeah, well, in high school, I was a bit of an overachiever from a really young age. I was, really hyper ambitious. I wanted to be good at everything. And I guess that's sort of one of the big contradictions I've had to, in a way, navigate through my life. And I'm still navigating. I don't know if I'll ever stop navigating that sort of tension between like wanting to do the best and be the best and that sort of and wanting to do everything and also just sort of letting yourself be a normal human being as well. But what originally drew me to it is in high school, I, was always interested in sort of, in a way, finessing, like, even in BCE, what sort of subjects could serve me well and actually interest me in a sort of deeper, in a way, more profound way, not just sort of ticking subjects off a list. And, I just felt that whatever stage of my life I was in, even if it was high school, early high school, late high school, or, post high school, it was just sort of I was just going to be doing the same thing but to a different level, because at the core, you know, I'd be the same person driven by the same values and interests. So yeah, so from, you know, it's long drawn out answer, but yeah, from an early age, you know, during high school, I was really interested in just picking subjects that were really interesting to me, like philosophy. I was lucky my school offered a really good philosophy program, and literature, theatre, and yeah, I really just focused on them, and then that pretty much stepped into, you know, anthropology and English and theatre at uni, and it was just sort of guided by a lot of teachers and mentors I had who, you know, I would hear them talking about something during class or, you know, outside of class, and I'd be like, oh, what field does that relate to? You know, because as a kid, you really don't know what is what. Like, I don't know, you have interests, but you don't know what that becomes in the future, and, you know, how you actually use that as a career. So yeah, and I would just ask, I know, you know, there's a pivotal moment where I asked my philosophy teacher this question about, you know, self-driving cars and how society's going to mentally and socially and culturally handle adjusting to that, you know, ultimate reality of having these different, you know, forms of technology. And anyways, and I asked him, what subject does this relate to? What lets me think about these sorts of questions? And he was like, oh, anthropology, you know, you study lots of different things in it, but that could also be one of the key components. So yeah, so that is what you need to be doing right now.
Awesome.
So Jess, is there any other contradictions in your life that may fuel your work or what you're doing currently?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think definitely this, I don't know, especially lately, just speaking off the top of my head, especially lately, this idea of youth and maturity, whatever, you know, semblance of meaning that really has been confusing me. And then all throughout my life, I've sort of been reflecting and seeing how that has often confused me, like whether I feel youthful and what that really even means. I don't know. And especially in, you know, in settings like school where you feel like, oh, I'm a bit of an like overachiever sort of type of person, and, you know, but then how do I still enjoy just simple youthfulness as well? And I think that's felt especially resonant to me, you know, in my early 20s now, feeling like I want to, you know, make the most of my youth, but also feeling in a way like, you know, always being labelled an old soul, and those types of, you know, ideas that we latch onto and we use to feel our identity, but sometimes can cause that tension and contradiction in our lives as well, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I mean, I'm just thinking what you're talking about with my childhood, there was a sense of when you're younger, you're trying to grow up. And now that I'm in my late 30s, there's this sense of, have I done enough with my life? You know, when I was younger, to kind of really validate why I'm here and what I'm doing. Just listening to your battle with that youthfulness, is that something that you think about, you challenge, or you see others going through at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, I find that a lot of my conversations with, you know, friends in our early 20s as well, like just during this sort of, in a way, intermediary time of life where you're sort of between youth, as it's normally classified, like adolescence and things like that, and also maturity, you know, as often defined by late 20s, and, you know, starting to like traditional notions of settling down and things like that. And I find conversations often revolve around, you know, what do I do? How do I act? What am I meant to be doing? And who am I meant to be spending time with? And yeah, there's a lot of, I think, questions about identity at that sort of at this sort of age in a way as well. I'm sure there is, you know, at every single age, but, you know, I've only experienced this much so far. So it seems, I feel like I'm at an especially, I don't know, confusing and critical, I suppose, juncture of, you know, how I'm meant to feel like I'm living my youth, you know, but not sort of having to pretend to be taking parts in those more, I guess, cliche versions of what youth is meant to mean.
So Jess, obviously you're speaking about youth and, you know, trying to balance between enjoying it but also doing things you enjoy and not trying to like typecast yourself. Do you think there's any like methods in which you like to engage in without trying to typecast yourself? Because do you feel like ever with your identity people try and put you in a box like, oh, Jess does this and this, but you're like, no, that's not who I am though?
Yeah, that's interesting. Like ways that, you know, I sort of tap into that youthful feeling, which I assume would carry on to, you know, any age. I'm sure if it was, you know, 80, still have strategies to tap into that youthfulness. I don't know, you know, like, you know, Sarah-Jane, with my whole project of Silly, SILLII, my little textiles and creative project that I've been sort of trying to do on the side, the whole notion of it is, you know, tapping into your inner child and just, you know, listening to what actually makes you happy and joyous in a very real way. And yeah, I find when I do things like play and, you know, play with materials and textiles and want to create something just for the love of it, that's when I feel, you know, most tapped into that youthful feeling rather than ideas of like partying or like, you know, going out. And yeah, those things don't make me feel as, you know, living up my youth as much as, I don't know, just enjoying my time. And yeah.
It's really interesting that you're looking for ways to really be able to bring that out and connect with it. I was actually watching a documentary last night, a documentary TV series on Marvel, and it was a particular episode on women in Marvel and the women that are going in there to really break ground around being creative and pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the comic world. And one of the quotes that came out, which I thought was really powerful, was that, you know, the hardest thing in life is choosing to be or look like yourself. And I thought that was really, really powerful. And it got me thinking about chatting with you tonight because I'm really interested around this, trying to do these things in life that really fulfill you and are playful, but this contradiction or this challenge of actually turning up as yourself. And I'm just really interested to hear about your experiences with trying to be yourself, trying to turn up as yourself, trying to set your identity up, but doing that in the pressures of society and all the expectations. So do you have any sort of key experiences or moments where that's been particularly difficult or has helped define that process for you?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like that sort of prompt in a sense, you know, I like that quote. And yeah, definitely so many, I guess, you know, little moments come to mind, and it's been sort of an ongoing thing for me, and I'm sure for, you know, basically everyone, but you know, reflecting on my own life experiences, it's definitely been something I guess prominent in my life, you know, dealing with accepting my truest form of, you know, identity and being able to just fully embrace who I am and not feeling like I have to, you know, show up a certain way for certain people, and yeah, just being able to be fully myself. I think, you know, speaking about career and, you know, interest and passions and things like that as well, choosing to go down an arts and humanities route, you know, and especially even a creative route, has been such a different thing from what my family has done in the past, and such a big departure from what probably a lot of people expected from me when I was younger. Yeah, and, you know, like I just have distinct memories of my dad, as I'm sure almost every Asian dad, like telling me that they want me to be a doctor or a lawyer, and which is totally fine. I think it's really difficult to try your whole life and match those expectations. Of course, it's like a huge pressure to place on a kid just trying to figure it out and, you know, navigate their own identity amongst those pressures. But I also think, you know, I never really blame people for wanting to put those expectations on, because I think it's it's their way of showing you in a sense that they believe in you. And like, if you wanted to do those things, which they see as one of the highest forms of, success career-wise, they, feel like they have total belief that you could do that and they want you to do that. But anyways, I let those expectations down, and which is totally fine. But, it's taken me a long time to, I guess, because I knew my interest from a really young age. I remember writing in my sort of 6-year-old, 7-year-old journal, because I would always journal and write lists and stuff. And I remember writing in there, I want to be a writer. And then years later, 10 years later, when I was 16, I wrote in my journal, I want to be a writer, just in big letters, sort of affirming a belief, like a dream that seems so, I don't know, easy to forget, I think, because we get distracted by things and go down different roads and routes. And I think it was always a form of recentering myself and what do I want to create and put into the world. But anyways, so it's been a big, I guess, journey being able to let people down. Even if you're still doing something, good, and even if you're really striving for success in your own way, it still is a sort of difficult, I guess, contradiction of, wanting to please people around you who helped, give you the life you have and helped raise you, but at the same time showing them a new way of, being proud of you, in a sense. That's been a big thing for me, and showing also the, I have a lot of young cousins, and showing them, I think through my own life, that, you have the freedom to really do whatever you want to do. And I hope that that's, what I continue to help do for them. You can definitely be the more traditional versions of success, like, being a doctor and a lawyer, and that's awesome, and the world really needs that. But at the same time, you're not tied down to any thing in your life. I just hope, especially because I have a lot of young, female cousins, and I don't know, I just really feel driven to make them feel like anything is possible. And that doesn't, and sometimes that includes letting, your parents down, in a sense, but not down. I think, it just means being able to be really honest with them about who you are, and not worrying too much about what they might think. But,
And have you found that being like this honest with yourself and everyone around you, that has kind of allowed you to be able to do what you want to do and figure out what you need to figure out without allowing those external pressures and expectations to kind of like dictate the road that you take?
Yeah, I suppose, like, in a way, it just all becomes about you, sort of, what you want to do, because even in that question, there's already so many possible opportunities and possibilities and challenges, and, and then when you add like a whole other world of people around you, it becomes even tougher to deal with all the different levels of expectations and challenges and possibilities. So I guess it sort of limits the amount of doubt that you might place upon yourself. But but I still definitely trust in a lot of the people closest to me to still help guide me and keep me on the right track as well.
That's awesome. I'm always interested to know, in this journey, are there any particular things that have occurred or beliefs that you hold that you actually are hiding from the world in fear of judgment? And the reason why I ask that is that sometimes we appear on the surface to be really comfortable and really, comfortable with who we are and what we become. But I'm always really interested to know, is there anything underneath there that's kind of not being shown because of fear of judgment, or we wish we could change about the world so that we could express that vulnerability?
It's really interesting. For a second. That's a really interesting question. I suppose, just sort of in line with, I'm not sure how well this answers that question, but in line with what I was saying about, wanting to, I guess, in a way, be a role model, even though probably no one asked me to, but, as an older sister and older cousin, you feel the responsibility of it still. in line with that, it's, you know, if you're doing something different and a little bit, you know, more out there according to family expectations and things like that. And I think it can definitely feel confronting and sort of terrifying if you feel yourself not succeeding, you know, in the way that you wanted to show them that you could succeed. I think that's absolutely terrifying, the idea of wanting to do something new or taking a risk and not doing as well as you'd hoped. And I think that's, I guess, in a way, my biggest fear, career-wise or anything-wise, really. But I think, you know, I'm slowly learning more and more that that's part of the lesson as well, just showing people that it's better to take the risk and fail, because what else are you going to do? You know, it's better to challenge yourself in that way. But, yeah.
Awesome. And how do you, just out of interest, how do you manage through some of those challenges or when those feelings come up? Like, how do you manage that for yourself?
Yeah. Like I said, I've been journaling a lot since I was really young, and I, for some reason, like recently heard some people talk about journaling as well. But I think it's a really cathartic thing, you know, to just free write and allow yourself to process all the things that you might not consciously be allowing yourself to process. And I think a big part of, you know, going through just life in general that I'm sure everyone has come to realize is just making space for all your emotions and all, you know, the fears that come up as well, and allowing yourself to sit in those discomforts as well and not pretending that it's all fine all of the time. That's super important, because, you know, we can be acting a lot even to ourselves a lot of the time. But I also talk to my mum a lot. That's big. You know, that's, for me, that feels totally relevant to my entire life journey, just constant conversations with my mum, which I feel just so lucky to be able to have. You know, we've always had a really, really close relationship, and I have a close relationship with a lot of my family, and they've always been really good mentors as well for me, but especially with my mum. So we always, have very, very probably too long conversations about our lives, and it never feels, you know, that's something I always value in our relationship. It never feels hierarchical or like someone's just advising me to do something. It just totally feels symbiotic and like we're both really learning from each other all the time. So yeah, that's something I really value in helping me overcome any challenge.
Awesome. So nice.
So Jess, it sounds like it's like having that really strong support network and community around you that enables you to have a better understanding with yourself and being able to sit in discomfort. How do you think that those elements play a part in how you interact in the external world, or people who aren't actually as close to you, or like just general people in the public?
Interesting. As in, how do those sort of tactics to handle these challenges flow onto the outside world?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean.
I got you. I think that something I've always, in a way, subconsciously, or I don't know if that's the right word, but, you know, done in my life is really filtered the amount that I intake, and also, in a way, the amount that I express. You know, I don't feel like compelled to often overly share too much about, you know, I don't know, my inner self and my inner circle and stuff. I feel a lot of time, and I mean, that's a huge point of contradiction, I feel, ongoingly in my life, this idea of sharing in public and also private and really sort of, in a way, reclusive. I tend to just really keep, a strong filter on the amount that I culturally intake, because, you know, especially with social media and things like that, there's just a lot to process mentally and emotionally. So I'm really cautious of that, and I'm also really cautious of the, you know, the people that I spend the most time with. I think it's really important for us to treasure people that treasure us as a sweet message for everyone. But, you know, I think it's really important to value people who genuinely value us. And so I think a lot of those, making space for myself and my emotions and things like that flows on to how others in my life make space for me in a really meaningful way, and my willingness to make space for them and, you know, allow them to express freely. All the people I'm close to in my life, there's no boundaries for what we can talk about and, you know, say to each other and share. And but, you know, obviously that is relying on trust and like a close circle of really good people. So yeah, I don't know if that answers it.
Yeah, it's good. I think one of the things that Sarah-Jane and I are really trying to hold space for as well, that we're keen on your thoughts on, is this notion of the limitations or the barriers or the challenges that race or even being a woman in today's society kind of really places on some of these choices that we make and how we show up every day, particularly at work, particularly in our study. So really keen on just hearing any experiences that you want to share around perhaps any potential challenges that you've had that are associated to this, that you're keen to kind of shed some light on for us and help us understand a bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that you know, dual thing of cultural and gendered experiences, I think, is really interesting, and it brings up in a way two lines of thought. But I think, you know, as a woman, I've always felt really well. Let me start. I think I felt for a long time really needing to perform as hyper masculine to feel like validated, probably relating to a lot of internalized misogyny. And I think that a lot of the time I pretended I was just very unemotional and, you know, logical, like sort of the things that we, you know, we paint to be masculine traits. But yeah, I think over time I've had to really confront that eagerness to show I'm not feminine or I'm not, you know, in touch with, I think femininity, and that can't be a powerful thing. So that's been, in a way, you know, completely immersed in my overall journey as well. And, you know, I think that stems from even a really young age. At a young age, I felt much more inclined to be naturally a bit more less, you know, female presenting, and to be a little bit more, you know, in a sense androgynous in how I, you know, in my style and in the way in the way I present to the world. And over time, that's been a big sort of ongoing journey in a sense. And, you know, I still feel like there's so much more to unpack in that way because of how society conditions us from such a young age. So but I don't feel too daunted by it, as opposed to excited to keep unpacking that and unraveling the, you know, layers of societal norms that have been, you know, immersed into my skin over years. But and I think especially it's interesting, you know, I just find interesting thinking about the area I've sort of become interested in, anthropology, and even a lot of the arts, while, you know, being from a Chinese background or just generally an Asian background, it's interesting, you know, anthropologically, it's colonial history, colonial history of anthropology, and the way it often, you know, goes into other cultures that are often distant and seen as more, you know, termed as more primitive and old anthropological text, is so hugely problematic to the field itself. And it's been a really, I guess, confusing and muddy thing for me to navigate throughout this degree that's just gone past, but ongoingly in the future as I, you know, keep going with my career and life. It's a very tricky thing to feel like, oh, I am part of this world that still rests upon this legacy, and, you know, what is my contribution to moving it in the right direction? And I certainly feel indebted to moving it in a better direction, and completely rethinking the approach of anthropology, which is, I suppose, ambitious, but that's what, you know, I aim to do collaboratively and collectively with peers. But
Sorry to interrupt, Jess. My next question for you was, how do you think anthropology could move forward from this quite colonialized history it has? And what would that look like?
Yeah, well, actually, something I'm particularly, passionate about is looking much more, and it's something that the field has been doing pretty contemporarily to again shift the lens of anthropology. But something I'm really passionate about is looking inwards towards what communities you are a part of, and that's something I hope to do in further studies as well, and looking at what communities you're a part of, and looking through your own background and experiences and history and connections to actually do research and be immersed in those communities, as opposed to seeking outward and wanting to sort of take a lot of the knowledge and information from other cultures. So yeah, I think that is a small but I think significant way to rethink what, in a sense, the discipline really is for and what it involves. Yeah, that's just what I think.
It's interesting that you talked about this sense of ownership or responsibility to kind of make some of these changes in society, particularly for your sister and for your younger cousins. Are there any other particularly strong driving reasons for this? And then some ideas around, how you're actually going to make this change to make it a little bit easier and better for them to navigate when they're coming up and through it?
Yeah, well, I think a key thing has been really just trying to, I think, from what you were first saying, the idea of why there's this sort of sense of immense responsibility in a way. I don't know. I think I've always felt like the weight of the world is on my shoulders, and I'm not sure why. My close friends will often tell me that it seems like that as well, that I just really think about what, more I can do really to make things better in a sense. And so, I don't know, it's in a sense a reflex. If something isn't good, I really do want to be a part of something that changes that and makes it better in its most simplistic way of saying it. But I think a key thing has been wanting to push myself out of my comfort zone and actually, despite what society might say, or despite what, people often in power or people that are more highly represented might say, I really push myself to take leadership positions, even though it's not intuitive to me. I always feel, again, that tension between public and reclusive. So it's definitely not intuitive for me, but I feel it's important to do it anyways, because, if not me again, then who? And yeah, and I just feel really passionate about sort of doing my best to extend myself as far as possible in order to, show those around me that they can too in their own ways. But yeah.
Jess, how do you think that other people in their life could, take on this responsibility within their own lives? Do you have any tips, tricks? I know that yourself, it's kind of just this natural, you feel the weight on your shoulders of the whole world. But how do you think other people who may not have that same attitude or perspective could take smaller steps?
I don't know. I feel like I shouldn't probably give advice. I want to learn more from others, but in a sense, that is probably a key thing: is to seek help when you need it, and is to be, I don't know, think about your relationship to the outside world critically. Mm-hmm. I just find myself thinking about, how can I help others, and how others helping me in what ways, and I don't know. I just think thinking about how you can continuously grow, and the amount of things you sort of I guess it's a humility thing in a way. It's, you know, the amount that we don't know yet and that we could know, and the amount that we don't do and that we could do. I don't know, that really propels me forward. And I think that I don't want to make anyone else more stressed in their lives because I get stressed all the time. But yeah, just thinking about that tends to motivate me a lot. Just, you know, the accumulation of more and more knowledge and ability to do whatever you want to do in a sense. But yeah, although that's a bit vague, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
It's really lovely to hear and watch you when you're talking to us about these thoughts and these experiences that you're having, because you're so upbeat, you're so calm, you're so motivated. I'm really keen. I know you've spoken about your mother, but were there any other kind of key influences, mentors, or anything else like that that has really kind of helped shape who you are to be able to really step up and lead some of these things that you're talking about?
Yeah, I actually, you know, since going back to high school, well, actually even to primary school as well, I think I was just really, really fortunate to have really good teachers who were always really key mentor figures for me. And I mean, that's why I'm so also passionate about doing the job I do now, working at my old school and, you know, doing alumni program development there. I think it's important for kids to have role models from all different sort of facets of life, and in all that express, you know, their advice in all different kinds of ways. That, you know, variety of experiences is important for, I think, young people to have available to them. But yeah, for me, even from a really young age, you know, there were teachers in primary school where I was really interested in reading and writing, and they would just give me things they thought I would find interesting, and just genuinely were interested in my life and in my interest areas. And especially during high school, I just really felt, I don't know, a belief that, or a very genuine sense of belief that, you know, I could really do what I put my mind to. And I think that's, you know, again, why I'm so passionate about my job, is because I think, you know, for most kids, public school education is the most vital resource. And the more, you know, genuine inspiration and support that they can get from that schooling experience is really, really important for their growth and development. So, yeah.
It's interesting, and I know this is top of mind for me at the moment because I watched this documentary literally last night. But what I'm also interested in is, were there any particular influences in pop culture or in society? Because when I was listening to these women last night talking about their passion to get into the comics industry, they were talking about the resonance and the connection that they got through characters that they saw and they could model themselves after. Was there any kind of iconic role model that perhaps you saw yourself in from your cultural background, from who you were sort of starting to become as a teenager or as a child, that really kind of connected with you and helped sort of inform some of these things that you now hold dear and are really passionate about?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't know how pop culture it is. It might be a bit more obscure than pop culture, but I, from really young age, again, I was really interested in reading, and I read a lot of poetry, and, you know, I'd like search up all the poets, and especially the female poets, and yeah, I often, you know, sort of mirrored a lot of my ideas about the world based on them, and saw, oh wow, they, you know, they really were just writing what they wanted to write, and that in itself just sort of motivated me. But I think I've taken a lot of key motivation, although again, this is not pop culture, but I've taken a lot of motivation from family around me as well, especially my aunties, and that's why, you know, in a sense, I see this translation of that relationship to then the next generation coming after me as well. I found, yeah, my auntie is really inspirational in terms of just really living the life that they wanted to live. And they always, in a way, took me under their wing and were able to, communicate things about life to me. But yeah.
So Jess, this is probably one of the last questions that we have. So do you think there's anything missing reflecting in your culture, or like any role models or influences like in society at this moment of time?
Yeah, well, like I was saying with, writers and things like that, looking up to them, but, I really struggled to find any, Asian female writers that stuck out in pop culture. There was, I think, pretty much no one that it was readily available for me to read, or for me to just even, see the journey of their lives, and for people to refer to me. There was just sort of nothing there that I felt I could hold on to. So I think that was definitely something missing. And even as I, started going into, late high school and further education, things like that, I was interested in like philosophy and, anthropology and things like that. Sort of more pop culture, I just didn't really see any Asian women as, the ones that were writing the books and running the talks and things like that. So I think that was really difficult for me. It feels like, I'm sure for so many others out there, like a solo journey where you just feel like I'm just piecing together these random bits and I'm just collaging like whatever I can find to put together some semblance of self and some semblance of, a dream future in a way as well. And I think it's, it's really difficult, really, really difficult. But I also think it's really powerful, because in a way you are, and in a way you rely on your community a lot more, on people around you, instead of just having a direct, icon or someone you can look up to, which I think in itself is a really powerful reminder of how important it is to raise each other up, and not rely on someone, above to tell you that you can or can't do something. Yeah.
Well, Jess, thank you so much for sharing with Andi and I about your life, your career, studying, everything in between that. I just want to inform everyone that if anything we've spoken about today during this conversation has caused any distress, please call Beyond Blue hotline at 1300 22 4636, or the Lifeline hotline as 13 11 14. They are here to help you.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Sarah-Jane. Well, this episode concludes the conversation for this year. And Sarah-Jane and I are going to take a little break of the channel over the new year, but we're going to come back and join Chat and Community again early February next year. So please keep an eye out for the upcoming dates and guests. We're going to have some great topics to talk about monthly from January next year, and some really good controversial topics that we think are going to be really important for us to hold and to have and to share with all of you. So please do keep an eye out and join us next year. Until then, really have a lovely festive season. Please take care of yourselves and your families. And remember, even though there might be contradictions and challenges that crop up along the way of our journeys in this crazy life, just know that you're never alone, and there's always someone there to kind of talk it through, be vulnerable with, and listen. So thanks again for joining us, and have a great night.
Bye.